Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
The World Cup dream is over, and despite inspiring a nation, we're going to pivot from a green wave to the Red Army of Munster. Is Clayton McMillan the man to lead them to the promised land? We shall see. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Interpro Show.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Interpro Show, your home for all things Irish rugby from across the professional and amateur men's and women's game in Ireland. I'm your host, Caolán Scully, and I'm joined again by our Irish rugby A, B, C and D, if you include me, Adam, Ben, David. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome back on. We'll skip the pleasantries. We have a lot to get into, a lot of decisions and talking points from the rugby that actually took place the weekend, because as we know, Ireland fell at the quarter-final hurdle yet again, this time in Rugby World Cup 2025. France, the victors, and to the victors go the spoils. And David, I'm going to start with you, because this might be the ultimate gut punch, because this was a 13-0 half-time lead, a tactical game plan executed to perfection, RT were saying, and they were right. Bernard Jackman was the one saying that. But geez, if there was ever a way for the rugby gods to conspire to hand Ireland a loss, they had the work cut out for themselves, but they managed it. They really dug in there, even with their teeth.
Yeah, it was. Gosh, for what a match! It was. For a game that we went into, I don't know. I don't want to say we didn't have any expectations, but like getting to the quarterfinal was where we wanted to be. We managed to get there. We hadn't come out of the pool with the win over New Zealand, so we were up against France. It's been a few years since Ireland got the better of France in the Six Nations. I know we were going out with the intention of beating them, I think, down in Cork. So, it was a bit of cautious optimism. And after that first half, God, expectations, it's the hope that really kills you. It was such a good performance. It was so good. It was kind of almost unbelievable that we had this incredible lead built out. We seem to be more than capable of not only holding our own, but holding France down and giving them nothing to breathe. We had the chance just at the end of the first half to extend the lead, and God, it's the things you end up regretting not pulling off that will really sit with you. But to France's credit, I think coming out of that first half, it would have been a lot for any country to keep their heads and to keep fighting back. And I think that's always something that's important to remember. As we are an Irish podcast, we're always going to favour the Irish team, but you've got to give credit to a team who didn't take a poor first half lying down and came back and scored 18 unanswered points. There's a lot to be said about things that should have happened, and I'll go into them in a second. But the fact that those 18 points were unanswered, one way or another, building a 13-point lead in the first half is great. Not scoring anything in the second half is really not something you can afford to do in a match like that. And while there is a world in which Ireland could have ground it out and kept the scoreline, realistically, you have to keep scoring. And I'm a big believer in you control what you control, and scoring is what Ireland could have done to give themselves the best chance of winning, and they didn't do that in the second half. The refereeing decisions, look, these are going to haunt us, and it's something it happens all too often. There's definitely the two big instances in this game, which were then cited after the fact, are going to leave a really, really bitter taste in a lot of Irish mouths, because it is just a case of a mistake was made on the day. It wasn't the fault of any Irish player, anyone in the Irish team, anyone in the Irish management, that it didn't get caught. And because of that, Ireland didn't get an advantage that they probably should have had. What would have happened if France were down to 14 or down to 13? We won't know now, because it didn't happen. And that's something that Ireland can be justifiably angry about. But the thing that they should be, we should also always remember, is that, at the same time, 15 on 15, we didn't score in the second half, and that's something we have to take responsibility for. But at the end of the day, going into a semi-final against would be England, who are just a league ahead. It was always going to be tough beyond this. This is an Irish team who went out there and I thought really kind of captured the imagination of the whole country. I think there were, I don't know how many tens of thousands over supporting that. I know there were close to 20 over for the final pool game in New Zealand. The support that this team has demanded, and the performances they put on, and just the hype train that they have built throughout this competition. It's unbelievable, and it should be celebrated, despite the frustrating end. I know they announced just in the last few weeks that Ireland are going to take one of their Six Nations games to the Aviva Stadium next year. I have already got my tickets. I'd encourage everyone else to get theirs too, and we should pack the place out, because that would be a just homecoming for a team who've really done themselves proud. And aside from, like I said, they probably should have scored a bit more in the second half. They don't really have anything to apologise for. It was a great tournament, a very frustrating end. But it's a young team. There's only one player in there, I think, who was involved in the last World Cup 8 years ago. We'll see who's still around 4 years from now, but I know there's going to be plenty. Aoife Wafer's still only 22. It's a young team. There's still a lot to go on, and if we keep growing in the next 4 years the way we have in the last two, then it'll be another quarterfinal. It could be another semi-final, and really, I don't think there's a limit beyond that for this team. So a frustrating end to what was still a fantastic tournament.
Yeah, no, it is. And like the tournament is going, and like obviously as rugby fans we'll be tuning in, especially that Canada New Zealand semi-final. It promises to be a proper humdinger. But Adam, it is that sense of what could have been. And yes, we've been over this before with the men's team and their quarterfinals and so on and so forth, and how they never really got in front in any of the last couple of years. Ireland did this time around. They were 13-0 up. It should have been more. Potentially could have had a penalty try for a maul being pulled down after it got maybe 15, 20 meters on France. But at the same time, when you don't score in the second half, and when you only use 4 of your 8 substitutes and things like that, it's going to be very, very difficult to get over the line, and ultimately it was for Ireland.
Yeah, it was one of those that, like, it's very difficult to win a game if you don't score any points in the second half. And when you have a team that has 18 unanswered points against you, and as you said, the 4 substitutes, like like we sort of needed to stretch out our squad and actually make use of those substitutes to get fresh bodies on the pitch. But as sort of like David said, it's just projected like this World Cup will be, this is sort of like a little stain on such a great and progressive World Cup for everyone, I feel. It's one of those that we're going to look at in terms of not necessarily for the refereeing decisions, as they will probably get remembered forever, and it's not our typical quarterfinal exit, because the last couple of quarterfinals in World Cups, they were sort of just like we got everything handed to us essentially, whereas this one we showed fight, and we showed fight from the get-go. It was just a determined and dogged French team that came out in that second half, especially with their last try was almost end to end. And it was just great, like, backs play from them. But to sort of add on to David's point of like the progression and how much we've seen of it and how it's all been built by the players. The hype has all been built by the players, and the whole release the fleece thing. The fleece sold out, I'm pretty sure, within
In an hour, I
yeah,
believe.
about an hour. I've signed up for a waiting list, just in the hope. But yeah, I think it's something to be celebrated, and I do agree with David that I think this is now our statement is that we need to sell out the Aviva for the Six Nations game. Just to show how like that with the young players that we have, these next 4 years, the game is only going to grow in strength, and it's something that we should celebrate completely. Whether or not when we get to the semi-final, if we would have got to a semi-final, as we said, England are like leaps and bounds ahead, but that's due to their progression and how much money they're putting into it, and also their team structure as well. They've got quite a strong league in that sense, but yeah, I think it's like a little bit of a dampener to something in reality, which is a big, huge positive step for Irish rugby.
Yeah, and there's just that whole like lure of it being like a semi-final if it would have been at the last four, and there's all that kind of like intangible stuff that helps getting that bandwagon support in because I spoke to a few journalists last week. I actually can't remember what day we recorded last week, whether it was Monday or Tuesday, but I spoke to them on Tuesday, and they were like, "How big has that thing been?" Like, because I was one of the youngest ones in the room, and they're like, "How big has the whole like TikTok thing been?" And I was like, "It's been massive." You look at the numbers, it has been absolutely massive, and you do hope that support carries on to the Aviva. Like the current record attendance for a home game for the women's rugby team is, I think it's like 9, 10, 11,000 something in and around that in the RDS. I would be shocked if they don't hit 20, 30,000 in this one and then more. A big issue that the RT pod raised in particular, and I listened to them, is, and I think the Indo may have raised as well, is these players go away now between now and the Six Nations. You won't see them. If you're not following them on social media, you won't see them. They won't be on TV. They mightn't be playing AIL, maybe a bit of sevens for some of them, but how the RFU get the most out of this next period is really, really important as well because we do want to see a big attendance there. And there's also the potential of, there's 3 home games next year. To the best of my knowledge, it's going to be 3 home games in 3 different cities. So more than likely Cork, and I believe between either Belfast or Galway for the other one. I think it could end up being Galway. We should wait to see on that one. But Ben, we can't not talk about some of the instances at the weekend, and obviously Le Bite on Aoife Wafer is one of those. We mentioned them all there. Personally, I don't think Amy Barrett Theron had a bad game or anything like that. But as I kind of said to you before we hit record, it just feels like this game is getting more and more complicated to officiate because there's so many changes, and it's just at the stage now where you have games like these where it just spirals out of control, and you're looking upstairs to the TMO, but the TMO is being told don't come in, and where do you go from there? Because quite frankly, and I mean this is the greatest respect in the world to these paid professional referees, some of the cleanest officiated games you will see are AIL and junior rugby at the
Yeah.
moment because they know exactly where they stand. Whereas our top referees are getting filled with so much information, it's just too hard to keep up.
Well, and there's been a lot of criticism, in my opinion, unwarranted at the referee at ABT from Sunday. The maul in the first half, okay, fine. For me, it's a penalty try. I think most people will agree with that at this point. Le Bite isn't really on her to call. She followed protocol. She asked her TMO, nothing came back. At the same time, the TMO was incredibly efficient on every high tackle that came in. If they were missed, he was in a shot. And that is something that I don't think in all the discourse this week around, the referee wasn't great. They were, as a team of 4, they were excellent on most foul play decisions. Yes, Le Bite, unfortunately, is a stain in that game we've talked about for years to come. But we've seen across the Women's World Cup, look, I don't like going back a game, but we've said here after the New Zealand game, Holly wasn't great in that. It's got to the point where the offside line is impossible to referee for a team of 4. We're almost at the NFL point where do you push an offside referee in there to just mark that line off mauls, off rucks, off scrums, instead of having currently the touch judge try and mark it as best they can. World Rugby are trying to keep TMOs out of the game. I get it, but it's not working. And it's a shame that we're coming in what has been a wonderful tournament for women's rugby. And we're talking most weeks, even when Ireland aren't involved, about a referee decision or something that was missed in a time when we should be saying this tournament has changed this game, certainly in the home nations, if not further afield.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like both things can be true, and we will weigh it up, and we do look at it through that lens. And I do think you're right. Amy Barrett-Theron had a good game. I don't think Holly was at her best the week before, but not being at her best is nothing to crucify a referee for. That will happen, you know. But I think some of
It's
that
been
boils
nearly a
down
failure
to
of we've had our teams of four throughout the tournament, and they're being either hamstrung by the game has to flow. We have to keep the game going, want the game to be entertaining. But at the same time, it's a game where offside is one of the most crucial rules that we have. It isn't enforced as well as it should. That leads to high tackles, that leads to injuries, let alone the scrum, the ruck, the maul,
the
the
jackal.
bite on top of it all.
Yeah. And for me, the big one, and I'm a strong advocate of this in the last few years. I love the jackal. I love a jackal turnover, but the jackal and the um contact point of the high tackle and what deals a high tackle for me needs to be reviewed at a professional level or a semi-professional level or whatever. Like,
We've done the right call in particularly, now, I can only speak in Irish point of view, but we've high tackle at sternum now across the amateur game. And it's worked wonders for getting kids from the ground up. You tackle here and you stop. It'll never come into the program. It won't be a thing they'll do, but they should.
even though it's a better product,
Yep.
AIL and Junior Rugby is a better product.
Well, you can
But
offload
anyways,
like that. It's tremendous to watch.
yeah, it really is. But anyways, we'll have loads of time. We'll probably get into that at some stage later on the season, because I'm sure there will be some instances that will affect some province and we will be up in arms. And I'm not going to say which one, but more than likely, because this is what happens, it'll be Munster or Ulster that will feel aggrieved. Not because they're an area of the country that always feel aggrieved, but because somehow Murphy's Law will always kick in rugby. But you never know. Maybe it won't be. But speaking of the devil, or speaking of the Red Army, that's where we're going to go to next, because Munster have a new head coach in charge, Clayton McMillan. You can get the thoughts of outside people from the likes of Hugh Griffin and so on the United Rugby Rewind, who is very high on McMillan. He took the Chiefs to 3 straight Super Rugby finals, having been in the doldrums after the Warren Gatland era. But Adam, before we get on to the new man in charge at Munster, last year was such a roller coaster. You covered the back end of that for United Rugby Rewind, and it was just so fittingly Munster, because they started the season hoping to kick on. They lost their coach. They had an injury crisis. They kicked on the back end of the season, and they should have got to a semi-final, but it went to a penalty shootout, which remarkably is the second time in the club's history. So wonderfully Munster last year, wasn't it?
It was really Munster last season. It was such a topsy-turvy season with 9 wins and 9 losses. And I'm looking through some of like the last season's results, and I'm thinking there was like a couple of like you started the season off with a win against Connacht, and then you lost against Zebra in the second round, and that was almost like the polar opposite of how your season was going to go, because then as I say that, it was like 23-0 against Ospreys. Then you had uh, 3 straight losses against Leinster, and then you had the South Africa tour. But yeah, like Munster had that season where you had, in typical Munster fashion, Munster fans always had that hope because of that semi-final and that penalty shootout. It was like Tales of Toulouse gone by. It was one of those. It was probably one of the most interesting games to watch. Like, because I'm an Irish fan, of course, I'm going to support one of the Irish provinces. But the wink and all happened as well. Can you believe that was last year? Can you believe that was last year?
It feels
I
like a
can't believe it
decade
was
ago.
This
I can't
season.
believe that was last season. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, Munster's season was one, like, it was a memorable one for the right and wrong reasons. That sort of 9 wins, 9 losses, and the way that East went out, with a new coach coming in, at least there's going to be a shining light here. With McQuillan, yeah.
Yeah.
McMillan, yeah, sorry. Coming in, like there is a shining light there for Munster, and there is hope there. But yeah, from last season, the only way is up, I'd say, for Munster. I'd say you're going to be, I think you're going to outperform yourself from last year, which for Munster standards, I don't think is that hard. And you've also got a nice wee game against Argentina midway through the season, which I'm very jealous about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And like that's one of the things about, Munster. They'll have these kind of games where, and like Porky Queeve as well for Europe, which I'm sure we'll have loads to discuss when that comes around. But Ben, I'll just come to you before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty, because as Adam kind of said, it feels like Munster can't hit a lower ebb, but at the same time, they finished what, sixth last year, maybe fifth. There was a couple of games there where they really shouldn't have dropped them, and yeah, like it just felt like, well, of course they are. That's the way the season has gone. But also
Yeah,
at the
and look,
same time, it wasn't awful. They did win in La Rochelle, and it was just that mixed bag. But now McMillan's in there, and he's such a cultural presence, an aura type presence, an incredibly big man, I should say. Like, I'm pretty sure you could put me and Adam in the same trench coat and he'd still be bigger than us. Like, he is huge, but it does feel like this fresh start. And we might talk about the book a little bit later on, we might not, I don't know. But it does feel like for the first time, probably since Razzie came in, that there's an air of fresh start about Munster, which is a long time coming.
it is. And like, yeah, Adam said fresh air, you say fresh start yourself. This year's huge for the province, the organization. We've had turnover of players. Three of the more senior players are gone in the past 2 years. Pam gone, Murray gone, Earlsey gone 2 years ago, Zebo gone 2 years ago. Like, there is a gap to fill. They've got the right coach in. You say McMillan, you see him walking around Castle Troy. The man takes up the full curb. Like, he is massive. There's an aura around him that I think the club has needed. You say Razzie, Roundtree came in, had that as well. Roundtree had that level of, this is my club, I get this club. And we all saw what happened in his first year. He came in, he won games we probably shouldn't have won. URC was won. Fine, wheels came off a little bit. But Munster every year, we start really well. We get some injuries. We go to South Africa, things fall away. We go to Crow Park, things fall away. And yet we somehow end up skin of our teeth losing a URC quarter final. Functioning line out, we beat Bordeaux, and I'll get hounded in the comments for saying this, but we do. We beat Bordeaux in that quarter final. If the line out works and we have a right crack after losing that semi. We'll get to depth chart, we'll get to fixtures, but I'm not unconfident.
And for the interest of fairness, because we live in a democratic state here in Ireland, I'm going to bring in David Cordial now, who I'm sure will tell us that we are all wrong. I'm joking, David. You can say whatever you like, however positive, however negative. I don't mind. But as the lads kind of summed up there, it is this weird zone for Munster, and I don't think any other province is in it, where it does feel like such a fresh start, but also such a promising position. Because if Munster went to finish second in the URC this season, you wouldn't be surprised. And yet, if they finish seventh, you also wouldn't be surprised. Do you know that kind of weird way?
Yeah, I mean, but I think in a way it's a testament to the league. Like, up until the last round last season, we weren't 100% sure who was going to finish where. Munster, ended up almost winning a quarterfinal, but could as easily not have made a quarterfinal. It's I don't know, to a degree, Munster are a team overburdened by the weight of history in that they've got the biggest brand in Irish rugby. They have the halcyon days of the Heineken Cup wins in their past, but particularly with Peter O'Mahony, Keith Earls, Simon Zebo, Conor Murray all retiring, those days are they're a long time ago. It's almost 20 years ago. And that's not to say it's not something they should aspire to. I know O'Mahony certainly would have liked to make it back to a European final. And there were years where it was possible, but as a Leinster fan, you don't always have to grade yourself against the very, very top possible achievement. And this is a year where they have a new coach come in. There's obviously the bit of the struggle losing Graham Rowntree. They have some new recruitment, but they have a solid team. They have a solid core, particularly the half-back pairing. At the moment, it's not clear who's ahead of who in the 10 shirt for Ireland, but like Jack Crowley led Ireland to a Six Nations championship in his first season in the 10 shirt. Craig Casey is very firm, past their Conor Murray at test level by the time Murray retired. He's firmly on James Gibson Park's heels. Um, you know, with that in the centre of your team, there's loads of stuff you can do. They've recruited well in terms of bringing Lee Barron and Michael Milne in terms of bringing Dan Kelly in. Um, you know, it should be a good year to be a Munster fan. I think it'll be interesting to see how Clayton McMillan, that's the new coach, how he goes. He did great work with the Chiefs, particularly against the side like the Crusaders, who are so consistently dominant. To get the Chiefs consistently to finals, to be competitive in that kind of environment is a testament to what the man can do. And if he can bring that kind of consistency to Munster, there's a lot they can do, and there's a lot they should aspire to do. So I think, my hope for Munster and their fans this season would be that they can look back at it and say we didn't leave anything behind us. They don't usually. Um, but yeah, I mean, cautious optimism. This is a team who should be making um, URC knockouts every year and should be aiming for home quarterfinals. And I think that's well within them to do. And then when it comes to Europe, could you have beaten Bordeaux? And, we won't get into a fight over that one, but it's not beyond you to do either, because then you have the whole run of when Munster won the URC and they won back to back to back away games. So they can do it. Whether or not they will on a day-to-day basis depends on injury, depends on form, depends on a whole lot of things. But they can, and I think that is something that they can hang their hats on. I think it'll be just now interesting with this changeover. A Munster team without Pierre O'Mahony in it. How long has it been since we've seen that? Without Conor Murray there. This is a team full of young Munster players. And I think I'd like to see players like Jack Crowley, who's a leader, not just for Munster, but for Ireland. A player like Craig Casey, who's now captain Ireland. I'd like to see those players kind of pick it up and go, this is going to be our team now. And work with Clayton McMillan and his new coaching staff and go, okay, would we like to achieve what, Paul O'Connell and the lads did back in the day? Yeah, we would, but we'd like to do it ourselves. Kind of like what I was saying with Ulster. I want to see what this generation of Munster stars do. It's not all about hanging your hat on what guys did 20 years ago. What are you going to do? And I think they've got the players now, they've got the fan base, they've got the stadium. It's there for them. They just have to go for it.
Well, thanks, David. I was just thinking to myself, it's not 20 years ago, and then I realized, oh shit, it's 20 years in May since the first Heineken Cup victory. But if they are going to do it, they are going to do it on their own terms and with their own leaders. And Ben, I have to start with you, of course, as our resident Munster fan here, with this depth chart, and it looks pretty strong. As we said, kind of similar to Ulster. That first layer, really, really good. Second layer, and also a lot of good academy talent as well. But you've been watching I was going to say both preseason games. Only one of them was available to watch, the 28-all draw with Bath. But it does feel like Munster, yes, they've lost O'Mahony and Murray and Kilcoyne and Archer and guys like this. But at the same time, they've bolstered. Michael Milne, Lee Barron is in there. Edwin Adogbo back fit, Roman Salnoa back fit. They've got JJ Hanrahan in as their backup 10, Dan Kelly. It's still a pretty good squad. That's before you get into, the young players like your Ruan Queens, your Evan O'Connells and so forth. So just take us through this Munster depth chart and where you think it's at.
I mean, first of all, I'm glad Dave made the point that, the old guard is gone. It's time for this group of Munster lads who are all relatively young to stand up and say, this is our club now. We're winning trophies. We're not afraid of anyone. It's what you want to see happen. Like front row, again, I've said this to you, it's nearly a 3-coin flip between the three, Jeremy, Milne and Josh Wycherley. Wycherley has played European games, done very well. Michael Milne came down from Leinster, looks like one of the best props in the country already. Jeremy Loughman, we all know what he can do. He's excellent. He's as solid as you're going to get in this scrum. Hooker can only get better, I think, based on last season. Lee Barron came down in the very brief time we saw him. He looks excellent. Dermot Barron, again, not that far behind him. I think his throwing needs a bit of work, but look, he'll get there. And then there's Scannell, who will never, ever have a bad game for you. Jaeger, Salanoa, I've said this during the week, I think Salanoa starts when he's fit. I think if we can get Salanoa fit and get Salanoa scrummaging, he's a monster. Jaeger will hopefully be away at Irish camp. I think he deserves another shot, whether he gets it or not. Very different story. But look, Munster second row. What are you not excited about there? Jean Klein Tyke Byrne, Edwin Dogbuff, and Wycherley, Evan O'Connell. Ruan Quinn could get a run in second row as well. Excellent when he does. And then you've got your back row, Tom Ahern, John Hodnett, Gavin Coombs. Does Kildellen get in? Possibly over Coombs, possibly over Ahern. Brian Gleeson, very much on Coombs' back. Gleeson should be looking to start some of the Six Nations games at least. And then, as Dave said, look, you've got the halfback pair, Casey Crowley.
I'll pause you there, Ben, just for a quick second, because before we get into the back line, like it is two layers, third layers in some spots is really, really strong for Munster. Yeah, they're probably a little bit light in second row depth and things like that. But as you said, like, or sorry, not as you said, but like there is a lot of talent there, but there's a power element. Mill, Salanoa, Jaeger, Klein, Dogbo, Ahern, Coombs, Gleeson, Quinn for a lad of his age is quite powerful. It does
Bring
feel
in
like if
either Wycherley
Munster,
on top of that as well, then you just have power.
yeah, like start of the season, Finney Wycherley always looks jacked. To his credit, he's a much bigger man than me. I'm not making fun of him at all, but like if Munster are to play a more Chiefs brand of rugby, that they kind of have the tools there. Like Ruan Quinn, not the tallest big man, and like so on and so forth. And yes, power isn't everything, but it does feel like they have a little bit more than what they would have had before, where you're relying on, say, a Stephen Archer and a Niall Scannell, and you mightn't have Klein in there, and it just starts to get a little bit weaker, for example.
Like it is excellent. We can look at it and say, out of that first line, say we lose everyone in green plus John Klein and Ty Brown at national window comes up. You're looking at that second chart of Milne, Barron, Salnoa, Dogbo, Wycherley, Jack O'Donoghue, Kildellen, and Gleeson, and you're not concerned for 90% of your games. The power stays. The experience, while not being test experience, is still there in numbers. And even if you drop one line back, O'Connell, Quinn, John Royal, and Scannell, Wycherley, Shauna Dogbo, we've depth that we haven't had for a very long time. We've experience there we haven't had for an incredibly long time. Bring in the way we assume McMillan's going to play, which is going to be on ball, on ball with a heavy kicking element. We've a pack there to do it. We've packed there taking any team in Europe.
Yeah, definitely. And moving into that back line, then obviously Casey Crowley need no introduction. You've got the likes of Shane Daly's back fit as well, which is really important because he can slot in across the back line. Someone who impressed me watching that game during the week was Gordon Wood. His brother Tom Wood is also there in the back line. And I'll throw it up to share screen in just a minute. But again, it does feel like Munster have bolstered. And like Dan Kelly there, you could look at him and say, well, he only won one England cap and he was kind of in now the Leicester team. But there's a lot of talent there. He's someone the RFU have wanted to bring in. And they're the signings that we're always crying out for, guys who are ready. They can go and they can play for Ireland. They're not taken away from your dispensation. And again, like for a lad of his age, same age as Jack Crowley, but very, very experienced. And like that Munster backline, they were no slouches last year, so there's no reason to assume they will be this year.
No, Munster backline are, again, as good as we've had in a very long time. Kilgallen, if he's fit, him and Daly will have a battle for that 11 shirt. At the minute, it's very difficult to know who gets it week one, everyone being fit. Nank, with Kelly behind him, might actually get a week or two off without being sin bin this year, which will be excellent because he plays every minute. Tom Farrell, Sean O'Brien, you're not really losing an awful lot if you take a step back with Jean O'Leary Kareem behind him. If Jean gets minutes, he's going to impress everyone. He's going to be a superstar. Calvin Nash, Shea McCarthy were a bit weak behind Calvin. Shea is very good. He was very good against Bath. I'm not sure I'd be starting him in European games, whereas I wouldn't have any issue with Daly, Kelly, or O'Brien stepping in against Gloucester, for example. And then a fullback, I know we've Dick here starting in that, but Mike Haley, if he does what he did against Bath all season, if he gets back to his proper form again, Haley should be pushing for Irish camp, let alone just starting 15 for Munster.
Yeah, and look, Mike Haley never let you down. I know he's probably lost that turn of pace that maybe would attract you to Abrahams or Daly more so, but still a very confident bits player.
Like, you have Ben O'Connor just behind him. Like Ben
That,
O'Connor, there's an argument made, and people from a certain county of Munster will make the argument he should probably be starting in that 15 shirt.
we won't say which county, and we won't say which sport that is either. But Adam or David, whichever you want to jump in there. When we look through that side, and same with Munster, you look at like the academy players, and you're like, geez, some of Ireland's best under 20 players the last couple of years are coming out of Munster and Ulster. And this isn't a slight, this isn't to cause friction or anything like that, but like Tom Wood had a great World Cup. Michael Foy was brilliant. I know Gleason's on a senior deal, as is Quinn, guys like that, but that's an important factor as well, because as Ben kind of alludes to there, if you can start getting rotation, obviously Munster's injury crisis is what it is, and Brad Mayo's in there, and they'll be hoping he can fix that. But I'll come to you first, Adam. Like if Munster have more scope to rotate, and you do see the likes of Jean Lee Kareem or Gordon Wood or Sean Adabo getting their opportunities, and they're only playing 2 or 3 games. Ulster seen it last year with James McNabney before he became an every week player. It can just become, geez, this lad's really flourishing because he's playing alongside your first choice guys around him.
It's so important to have that sort of. I think Ulster in the past couple of years have been very good at putting in academy players like that to just see how they go. Bearing in mind it's probably due to injury that they do start, but when an injury presents itself, it's somebody like Sean and Dogbo who's going to step up and make that name for himself. Like it is sad to see players get injured, but then academy players, like the ones that you've listed, like James McNabney, there's ones that are like that they're hungry for spots, and then they will become your your new you've lost O'Mani, so you need like that sort of mantle filled. You've lost Murray, you need that mantle filled. Well, you've got that mantle filled with Craig Casey, but you need another one to start knocking on Casey's door now as well, because rugby is one of those sports where you're always going to get injuries. You're never going to have that first team on that. Ideally, you'd have most of them, bar an exception of about 3 or 4. Um, at most, I would say that's when the academy comes in, and Munster have that really strong academy, much like ourselves, much like Leinster. Connacht as well is starting to flourish in that producing players as well. You just need those academy players to be hungry for it, and they are going to be hungry for it because they've been in a pretty good under 20s Ireland squad, and they're going to try and push forward to get into that senior Irish squad as well.
Yeah, definitely. And David, I'm going to bring you in here to do our fixtures chat. I know, you've done a great job of it so far, but when we look at the season as a block, obviously Munster have that extra game in block one with that friendly against Argentina, but also it's kind of, it's not a bad start there. Cardiff at Edinburgh at home, Stormers at home, Scarlets away. Yeah, you've got 2 Inter Pros, they're going to pop up at some stage anyways. But there's also the element of, well, back in 2023, Munster at Scarlets and Cardiff to start, or Cardiff and Dragons to start, and they kind of let that slip through their fingers. So a fast start has been said about Munster for the last 3, 4 years, but this year in particular feels like they mean it. But they also meant it last time out, isn't that it?
Yeah, I mean that is the thing, and it can be hard to know coming into the start of the season how you're actually gonna be firing. You know, Munster and even my own Leinster have faced some uh, rocky starts in the preseason games. Those are often with very, very, very mixed teams. So it's not always particularly indicative of what's going to come next. So it'll be very interesting to see, particularly with the new coach, how they come out of the blocks firing at the start of the season. I've kind of broken it down kind of time wise. It's a very fractured season just because of I'm just going to go through the URC first anyway. Because of international windows, because of Europe, the way it's structured is quite broken up. So they have a block of 1 to 5 at the start there. I think they should realistically be targeting at least 3 wins out of that block. They have it in them to win 4. The Leinster away game will be tough. It always is. But I think it'll still be one. Munster aren't really a team to throw matches, and I don't anticipate they will there either. It'll be a very important opportunity, I think, for players like Casey and Crowley, possibly Hodnett and Coombs, to make arguments for their inclusion in the November series that's coming up there as well. So I think that'll be a big game for them. But I think realistically, they're looking at they should be looking at 3 to 4 wins out of that. They have that game against the Stormers that kind of sits by itself a little bit in at the end of November there, after the Autumn Nations, but before the Champions Cup. That's a home win that I think it should be against Stormers. They're a good team, but Munster in Thomond, I think that's in Thomond anyway. Yeah, it is. Should be targeting that one there. Then they have the 7 to 9 block from December through to the start of January. That's a tough run. It's Ospreys away. Not always the toughest team, but they have shown a little. They did show a little bit more last season. It will be away from home. It Dunraven Brewery Field, great name for a stadium. So that'll be an interesting one there. Then they have Leinster at home. They would obviously always fancy themselves in Thomond, but it's a fixture that Leinster have given them a lot of trouble in over the last few seasons. Then up to Ulster away. Again, they would hope to win that. Ulster at home would hope to win that. So they could pick up another win. In that block. It could be 3 wins, it could be 3 losses. I think it'll probably end up being somewhere in the middle. Then they have a bit of a break until, well, not a break, sorry, it's a Champions Cup then again. And then they've got rounds 10 and 11, home to Dragons. That should be a win. There's really no other way of putting it. That should be a win. And then away to Glasgow. Glasgow, one of the better teams in the league, but Munster and Glasgow have a very, let's call it tempestuous relationship. So that's one that Munster will definitely be going after. And then
There's
in
the
the
words of the day. Thank you very much, David.
word of the day calendar paying off. And then that'll be, end of January leading into the Six Nations. There'll be a lot of players with a lot to prove on that one. 12 mid Six Nations, Zebra at home. I know I won't make the joke about how it went last season, but it's at home this time. It's in Thomond. If there was a fixture you wanted at that point in time of the year, that's probably the safest one to get. And then they have their South Africa tour. Not the worst, not the best. Durban is at sea level, but it's also incredibly what the word that's coming away is moist, humid. So it can be a sticky place to play, but it's very winnable. Munster have won there before; they can win there again. They have won in Loftus, haven't they? Against the Bulls as well, so that is winnable. Although it is tough to go to altitude. I'd say if they can pick off a win between those two, they'll be happy enough with that. And then they have the final run, 15 to 18, from the 18th of April through to the 16th of May. 2 home games, Ulster and the Lions, 2 away games, Benetton and Connacht. I think they, in that block, will be looking to win their home games and then pick up at least one win on the road for 3 from 4. I don't know if anyone's keeping score at home. My final tally from that is that realistically, midway through what they should be aiming for, out of that, I think Munster can realistically target 11 to 12 wins a season. They got 9 last season. The team that got 11 wins this season, the season just gone, were Glasgow, and they finished fourth. I think if Munster finished there, they'd be pretty happy with themselves. And that's not me being overly optimistic. I think that's a very realistic target for them. So if they can pull that together, obviously there's Europe in there, and Munster are a European team. They're going to take Europe very seriously. But just looking at the URC season and how that pans out, I think that should be a realistic target for Munster. Their European games, it's a different beast. But with the way that Europe stacks up, I don't really think that if everything else is going the way they would hope it to be going, thank you for filling those in, Caolán. What the hell does C mean? They're away to Bath, they're home to Gloucester, away to Toulon, home to Cast. You know, there are enough wins there for them to get at least into the knockouts, and once they're in the knockouts, that's kind of where Munster live. So, I think it's there for them this season. They can absolutely make a really good go of it. They probably came way closer to not making it this season just gone than they were probably really happy with. But I think there's a realistic target for them there with the fixtures they have to go, knockouts in the URC, possibly home quarterfinal in the URC, and definitely knockouts in Europe. If everything else goes equally. And then, throw into that, they have a friendly against Argentina, which could be great crack. Argentina have been playing lovely rugby in the Rugby Championship, and that could be a great day out. And Munster being Munster, they'll probably win it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, it's one of those where, as you said at the start of the show, it shows how competitive the URC is, that you're looking at this and saying, do you know what? Maybe there's, maybe 11 wins, maybe 13 wins, maybe 8 wins, like it is incredibly competitive. But one thing that, this is incredibly cliched, one thing that isn't competitive is that Munster's new jerseys have gone down like an absolute treat, like unbelievably. And with us to talk about their jerseys and all that sort of thing is Adam. Adam, I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to get the first jersey up. It's a 2006 retro vibe. I know you were probably only like 2 in 2006, but how good is that?
I was 4 years old. I remember it well. Um, oh yeah, Munster probably got the best provincial kits in the league. It annoys me how well Adidas have done this season. And it really like for me, and I'm sure David as well, being victims of Castore, this is like the ideal Munster kit. The collar is perfect. The red is perfect. The lines on the shoulders, it's just typical Munster rugby. And the fact that it's paying homage to the 2006 season, I've been given ratings to all these kits. I don't know if we've kept a tally of it, but I'd say this is like a complete 10 out of 10. It blew me out of the water when it all came out with these kits.
Yeah, no, and I apologize for the slight delay there. I was having a bit of issues, but it's going down an absolute treat, and I think that's kind of what matters most here. But once apologies. I'm having technical difficulties again, guys.
At
My
least
laptop is just deciding every once in a while. Do you know what? No. But here's
leave.
the other one. Here is Craig Casey in the white one. And Adam, I'll let you go again. I know the joke you're gonna say, so
Yeah.
maybe just don't bother. We all know what you're gonna say. Oh, it's
Uh,
an Ulster kid.
um,
But
Stand up.
it,
No, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was about to stand up and just be like, "Come on, boys." Anyway, it confused a lot of people online because it would look like we made a signing that was completely out of our wheelhouse, and it would have been the most confusing signings in Irish rugby since Isaac Boss went to Leinster. Anyway, got a player in. Anyway, sorry. This is another. I'd say this is even better than the Munster home jersey. It's so clean. I do love a white kit. That's just me being an Ulster fan. The Bank of Ireland. The only thing that would make this kit better is a red Bank of Ireland logo. To match that sort of the red aesthetic to it. You kind of have the white logos and with the red color. But yeah, I'm saying that wearing a Fijian Dura shirt with a big rooster on it. Anyway, but yeah, it's one of those that is, I'd say if that was a 10 out of 10, it's an easy like an 11 out of 10. I think your away kit's the nicest one out of the lot.
well, what really matters is whether or not. Well, a friend of mine always reckons doesn't really matter what the jersey is. If you win it, it's automatically people are going to love it, which is kind of true for the 2023 one in particular. I know, Ben, a lot of people that grew on them after they won down in Cape Town. But which one for you is going to break the pocket, or both potentially, because it might be
Um,
one of those years.
I bought both, unfortunately. My wallet, my clarinet did not like it, neither did my actual wallet. But that red jersey is just, you can't ask for better. You genuinely can't. Adidas have pulled it out of the bag, and they had to after the European thing that we got last year. Um,
A shirt that looks nicer with jeans than it does on the pitch.
yeah, Munster should not be in a blood washed, ran in the wash European kit. Doesn't work. They've made up for it this year. Both of them just stunning. And like I've said many times, this thought Ulster are very much my. If I had to take a second province, it would be Ulster. So I'm delighted to have both. It's fine. Makes it very
You're just
happy.
going to wear that inside out,
Go
going
up
to
to
the
Raven Hill, put that
Affidea
one on.
Stadium.
Yeah,
We'll give you Sparky on Tuesdays.
you can have.
Moving on.
Is it Axel?
Moving on. Not going into Sparky chat. Not getting into team mascot chat. Ben, we'll keep this short and sweet because you did a great job of going through Munsters like 23 first time around. But this is what we have predicted. For those listening on audio, we will post it on Twitter. Do follow us over there at the Interpro Show. If you've gone with Mill, Lee Barron, or Laren, I've heard some people calling him. Roman Salnoa, Jean Plain, Tyke Byrne, Tom Ahern, John Hodnett, Gavin Coombs, Craig Casey, Jack Crowley, Shane Daly, Dan Kelly, Tom Farrell, Calvin Nash, Takir Abrahams, Diarmuid Barron, Jeremy Luckman, Ollie Yeager, Edwin Adogbo, Alex Candellin, Paddy Patterson, JJ Hanner, and Alex Nankiville. We saw differently for a couple of these positions. Take the pack first, probably going for size first and foremost, but a very nice build there. And again, just shows when Munster can get everyone on the field, it's not bad. It's when they've a bunch of injuries.
Yes, look, I've gone, yeah, as you said, I've gone size with multiple lineout options and a front row that can keep up with pretty much anyone in the URC. Will we have Millen, Barnes, Allen Noah fit more than 5 games this season? Hopefully. If we do, that is what I would go with. Again, I said this to you many times, but I would swap. I think we will swap eventually a Dogbo for Klein. If a Dogbo can stay fit, he's guaranteed starter in my book every single time, and then that back three picks itself. Her and Hadna Coombs every single week.
And then moving into the back line, then Casey Crowley nailed down as nailed down as any half-back pairing in European rugby at the moment. And I know David mentioned about them kind of taking onus. Really feels like they have when you kind of, if you see the lads interacting with fans or whatever, it's great to see like Craig has kind of stepped into that Simon Zebo mold of being the guy that everyone loves and he loves to speak to everyone. But then you've gone with Shane Daly, Dan Kelly, and Taki Abrahams in that back line. Alex Langford on the bench, JJ Hanrahan on the bench. I assume you're kind of looking at that and thinking there'll be a lot of rotation and mix and match and horses for courses here.
There will. Like Daly and Kilgallen, if they're both fit, as I said earlier, will just rotate between each other. Takir, what was my starting 15? I want to see more of Mike Haley. If Haley can get back to the Haley we saw in 23, he starts and Takir goes onto the bench. And then you probably have to take out one of Nankar Jage, and I don't know how you do. But again, it's the first time in years we've been able to say we have actual depth from 11 to 15. Across every position, there's 2 or 3 lines of depth, and any of them can rotate in. It's excellent. I know you had Kilgallen at one point in your team, and I can see that as well. But Scarlets, I'd go Daly if he's fit. Just get him in.
Well, look, let it be known, whether you're a Leinster, Connacht, Munster, or Ulster fan, I love a power winger. Give me your Zach Wards, Jacob Stockdales, James Lowe, Shane Bolton, Diarmuid Kilgallen. Doesn't matter. Give me a power winger. I love a power winger.
Whereas I'm just let them run like little rabbits. Just
Yeah.
run and chase the ball.
How
Please.
very Connacht of you. Now that David has stepped away momentarily, I want to tell him that the background is absolutely abhorrent and against the rules of this podcast. Oh no, he's got earphones in. And oh no, he's got his James Lowe blanket, which is exactly what it says on
I
the
really
tape.
thought that was the Scarlet's dancing man for a second. No, it's James Lowe. Okay, that makes more sense.
Anyways, we're just gonna move into predictions because we've been going on long enough, and I actually think if it goes on any longer, something will be said, and we'll all be arguing with each other, and we won't have a podcast next week.
Oh, my background next week will be fun, I promise.
Oh yeah, something tells me Ben will not be as friendly and as kind as one David Cordial has been. But look, that's what provincial rivalry is all about. But we're going to get in predictions. We've done it already. Bear in mind, if you've listened to the first 2 episodes or watched the first 2 episodes, and you say, "Oh, they've predicted these 2 teams in the exact same position," I'm sorry. That is very likely. We are not keeping track of where we predict any team to finish in the URC. So Adam wants to jump in there.
Sorry, if you watch United Rugby Rewind, I might have predicted Connacht at 8, but then in reality I got in all the other teams and predicted them 12th. My bad.
Happens to the best of us. It really does. But Adam, I'm going to start with you. Munster, as we said, it's got a pretty deep squad. Like a lot of young talent there. Who are you looking forward to see? Who's the guy that's on your player to watch list?
I really want to I want to see more of a Dogbo. I want to see both the Dogbo brothers. I'm terrified of the fact that there's 2 Dogbos. You're gonna let me know that there's a third Dogbo coming. I swear, but
No,
it's
not that I know of.
A flashy fly half. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always like 2 big fellas and a flashy fly half. It always is in families. Look at the Barretts. But I'm really excited to see a Dogbo. I think he's gonna really push for the Ireland spot. I think we need like a big brute in second row. Like in his mold completely. I'm really excited to see how he progresses. And I'm also excited when you put up the graphic of Dan Kelly and Tom Farrell in that centre partnership. That's a pretty tasty looking centre partnership in terms of size and power. That like I would be excited to see that as well work this season.
Yeah. David, I'll come to you next. Is there any Munster player or players that you're like, do you know what? That's a guy I would pay to watch in Crow Park because we gotta work together here and sell tickets for that one, guys. That's for you, David. Sorry.
Yeah, I was taking a drink from my Lions brand water bottle. Did
you get that in what is now the Oasis shop?
It's not even the Oasis shop anymore. That ship has sailed too. They're gutting it again. I don't know what's going on there now. You know what? Like He had a fantastic season last season, but I think I just really enjoyed watching Tom Farrell all last season, and if he keeps playing that way, I'll really enjoy watching him play all this season. And another player actually, because we were talking about Craig Casey, and he's a player who's made a massive amount of himself so far, and I think will hopefully continue to push on for both Munster and Ireland. But I'd love to see an injury-free Paddy Patterson get a really good run at it because I think he's shown a lot of good stuff at nine for Munster and no, I'm doing that thing again where I'm picking guys who used to play for Leinster. Tom Ahern, class. Six shirt of Ireland is his if he wants it. I'd love to see it.
I mean, look, you've noticed your ways, and you've decided, oh, better not be biased, and you've fixed it.
I'm trying to grow.
Look, you know what they say, like progress is a challenge and all that kind of stuff. But Ben, I know you'd love to say Edwin Adogbo and you'd love to say Paddy Patterson. So just to be cruel, I'm going to take those away from you. You can't mention them.
I
Go
was
on.
about to say I'm so glad Dave said Patterson because he's my favorite import. He's excellent. I'm really excited to see Sal Noah. I really hope he gets a run in his fit because he has all the potential in the world. The small things we've seen of him, he's a monster. In pre-season, he looks like a monster. I've seen reports from guys from Castle Island today who are like he scrummages like a man who hasn't scrummaged for 2 years. A man who cannot wait to get behind the scrum machine again.
That didn't sound like a compliment. I'm just
No,
going
it
to
is.
say.
It's a compliment. It's a man who cannot wait to scrum against some big beefy men and send them going backwards. And I cannot wait to see more of it.
Yeah, potentially. Well, in all fairness, it should be said, like Munster's scrum against Bath was really good the other night with Jaeger and Lookman across from each other. But
And like, I
oh,
don't think he'll play every game, but when he does, he's all the potential in the world. And I have to Edwin a Dogbo. Edwin a Dogbo. I'm so excited to see Edwin a Dogbo.
if whatever about Dogbo is one that we're all excited to see. But Salnoa could be a real bull around the field if he gets going. But predictions then. I'll go with you first, Ben. We'll go back around. URC, where do you see Munster finishing?
Top four, probably fourth, would like us to push for third. I think Dave's right. 11, 12 wins is actually an attainable goal. If we get that, we get fourth, we get a bit of luck, second or third. Yeah, I think fourth is reasonable and should be the minimum expectation for this Munster team.
And then semi-final.
Europe, I think will win 3 out of 4 of the group games. URC will lose semi-final. Yeah, we'll get to semi-final and get knocked out from there. I think we'd either lose in the Aviva or lose in Loftus, unfortunately. Champions Cup, we win 3 out of 4 group games, probably lose to Bat, and ideally make a semi-final. Again, semi-final in both.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. I mean, Munster fans have just been crying out to get to the last four in Europe for a while now, and especially after the Lars result last year, it does feel like, maybe this time, yes, it's a slightly tougher pool on paper, but at the same time, they've won too long before, you
Like
know.
Bat are the ones that worry me. And it being game one is legitimately a worry. But like there's nothing overly to fear about Toulon. They're good. We've won the Mail 2 years ago. We can win the Mail again in January. It's fine.
Yeah. And look, Munster went to Northampton last year and put in probably can I say it? Won the games of the tournament, Munster and Northampton last year in Franklin's Gardens. Just an absolute humdinger of a game. I'm pretty sure I've said that word already so far. That's not great presenting. It's
You
always
need
great to
Dave's
have
word of the day
synonyms.
calendar.
I need a word of the day calendar. That's going to be David's Christmas present to me when the time comes. But and it's nothing got to do with the fact that I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning. But it like look, they will want to make it back to the semi-finals. David, URC in Europe, you predicted 11 to 12 wins. You really, really went through the calendar there, and I appreciate that. That was really well done. Europe and URC, then, if you were to put an end mark on it, maybe it's a double, maybe it's two quarterfinal exits. I don't know. Where would you go?
Um, I know. I think sticking with my early prediction for the URC, I think if they can get a home uh URC quarterfinal, then they should be in semi-final territory. And then with Munster, I wouldn't be just very Scottish there, wouldn't even be as certain as Ben that they'd go out in a semi-final because once they get to a semi-final in the URC, it's very winnable from there. So it'll come down to injuries and who they end up facing on the day there. Europe, they will get into the knockouts. That's kind of a foregone conclusion with the way the tournament's structured. they'll almost certainly get into a quarter final. And, I'd like to see them get to a semi-final again, because I think that's where I feel, even if they don't win from there, that's where Munster feel like they belong. I think that's where a lot of the rest of European rugby feel like Munster belong. They are a great of European rugby, and I think to see them get back to a semi final will be good again. So if they're getting to, I think if they can get to a home quarter final in the URC this season, they should be able to get to a semi final in Europe as well. And I think that's what they should be targeting.
Yeah,
Two semi-finals.
That's 2 from 2 so far. Adam, where are you going with this?
Yeah, so I said 5th on United Rugby, but I would say that 4th or 5th is that sort of sensible mark. I think that home quarter final is vital, as David and Ben said, to get up to push on for that semi-final. And David also mentioned as well how once you get to a semi-final of the URC, that's when all of the cards are up in the air. Every single one of those 4 teams could win a trophy there. That's the beauty of the URC. As for Europe, I could actually see them getting to a European quarterfinal. I definitely see them getting to a European quarterfinal. That semi-final also, I'd say, is really achievable for Munster. I think with a new coach, a new setup, it's sort of like looking at that European Cup the Champions Cup pool. It's like life, death, taxes, and Castor Olympic. So that's always.
I've got a meme for that. I might just throw it up without any comment.
Yeah, it's one of those that we're going to be talking about when it comes to it as fair enough, it was a great game, but it's going to be another 6-3. I'm going to say it now. It's going to be like 6-3. It's going to be a cold, damp day in Thormond Park. Anyway, but yeah, I think it's going to be 2 semi-finals is achievable. Definitely achievable for Munster this year.
Yeah.
I would say as well, I think 4th is there for Munster. The one thing I would really see for the URC as a whole is last season going into the final round, we didn't know who was going to be in the top 8, but we did know who was going to be in the top 4. I think it'd be great if those top 4 weren't certain going into that final round. That'd be great, because I think that's where the tournament, like, we're already very competitive. I think we can get even more competitive, and if we had no idea who was going to be where, in going to that final round, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. For myself, because I remembered around halfway through Adams, I never gave a prediction. Player to watch, I'm going to go with Dan Kelly. Again, I love a good, powerful outside back. I know he's centre. You know what I mean. URC, I'm going to say semi-final, as James Lowe's floating head, and now David's gone missing. This is really weird on audio. Well, I promise we're more normal on YouTube. But I'm going to go with Munster. Questionable. I'm going to go with Munster to make the semi-finals of the URC. I wouldn't hang my hat on it going any further. Again, 4th place I think is very achievable. I think there's 2 top teams in the URC this year. I actually don't know where the Bulls are at. I don't think the Bulls, the Sharks, and the Stormers are teams that you should fear at the moment, like Glasgow and Leinster. Europe, though, I do think there's a couple of teams you should fear, and I think that's a tricky enough pool. If Munster could get 2 wins and get a favourable round of 16 tie, then you never know. I'm going to go quarterfinal there on that one. But, gentlemen, my thanks to you all for joining us. We've got to hop off and get ready to watch either Great British Bake Off or Traders, or perhaps even both, because we're recording on a Tuesday. But we will leave it at that for tonight. We'll be back next week as our attention turns to, David, you can smile when I say this, the URC champions Leinster and the new season as a whole, because we're only 10 days away. Hard to believe, and there's James Lowe's floating face again. But if you do like what you see or hear, make sure to subscribe. The Global Game Line is absolutely soaring at the moment. So much URC content to come from Ireland, from South Africa, and a United Rugby Rewind show, as Adam and myself have mentioned. Make sure to turn on the little bell icon to be notified whenever the latest show drops. And if you have any questions or thoughts, please do drop them down below. Maybe you think that Ben's 08 jersey is nice. Maybe you want to buy David's, or I should say, maybe you want to buy any of the 3 merchandise pieces that have been shown on screen. I'm just wearing Abercrombie and Fitch top. It's not for sale, but I think the other 3, I think you could bargain with them. But anyways, from myself, Caolán, from Adam, from David, from Ben, until next time, slán go fóill.
for listening to the Interpro Show. We'll be back with more of the same next week. And if you've got time, give us a like and a rate on social media and a subscribe on YouTube. All the best.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.